Welcome to the session on the paper template. What I've done is I have come to our BGU website at bgu.edu, and I'm going to show you how you can find the web information by going through our website to get all kinds of resources. So first you're going to go to Current Student. Click on that. Come on. There we go. And you'll see the drop down says Student Resources, and over to the right has the Online Campus, the Catalog, and Forms and Documents. Where we're going to go right now is to Forms and Documents. And under Forms and Documents, what you'll see are many resources for you, from to change your address, to get a transcript, different documents. What we're going to go to is the paper template. So down here you see paper template. So if you click on paper template and then say open, what that's going to do is open up for you the template for all papers. Let's minimize this and bring up our paper template. Takes a minute. The paper template, you'll notice, is formatted in what we call Turabian formatting. So you are going to learn how to do Turabian formatting throughout your education with BGU. And of course, okay, here we go. Here is the paper template. Hopefully yours doesn't take that long to come up. This document is formatted in exactly the way that it needs to be turned in once you've put in all of your data. So let's start with the title page. This is the title page, Bakke Graduate University. Put your project title in here. Let's just say that this is the paper for your China, Overture to China class. So we're going to just put China project right here. Doesn't matter, you can name it whatever you'd like. Next, you're going to put in your name. So we're going to use Sally Sample. We're going to say that the course number and title. So the course number was OV2 701-Overture to China. The date of the class, and you can just put the month, that's sufficient. So let's say Sally took this class in April of 2010, and you're going to put your email address so that hotmail.com, so that your professor, if they have a question when they're reading your paper, can easily access your contact information. The second page in your project packet is the table of contents. And we will have a separate session that just deals with table of contents. This session is merely to go through all the elements that need to be in your projects when they're turned in, and to show you what a project paper looks like. You'll notice in Turabian, your table of contents is numbered with the lowercase, the I and then the II. I know there's a word for it, but I don't have it. The first page of every section is the bottom center, and the subsequent pages are in the top right. So you'll see that as we go through. And then here's chapter 1, book reviews, and you'll notice here we've started at page 1, and then page 2 is the upper right, just as we just discussed. Now this first page of your chapter 1 book reviews has two verifications. That when you turn in this project, number 1, you're verifying that the following list represents all of the books that you have read for this course. So you're going to list the books here. So let's say, for example, the first book that Sally Sample read was Christianity in China. And it appears on page number 2. And let's say there were 500 pages in this book, but she only read 325 of them for whatever reason. Either she ran out of time for whatever the reason is. She needs to talk about that in the book review. The second book, we're just going to call it China Book 2, and that one appears on page 3. And Sally read all 250 of those pages. Once she's listed all of her books and what page they appear in, like that first book is Christianity in China. That appears on page 2. Christianity in China, page 2, 325 pages. So once she's read all those books, all the books that are required for this class, she's going to total them up. Now the total required for a DMin student, I believe for an international class, it's 2,500 pages. So that's what she's shooting for. So maybe that's why she didn't read all 500 pages of the Christianity in China, because she had filled up with all these other books that were required reading, and that was a recommended book, let's say. You're also verifying when you turn this paper in that the work that is contained in this project is your original work, and that it hasn't been taken from any other source. In other words, not somebody else's paper that you're putting in here, other than the quoted materials, and that they need to be properly footnoted and referenced. And we'll talk about footnoting also in a separate session, because it takes a while to talk through how to footnote properly and use EndNote. So here's your first book report, and you're going to start it off. In his book, Christianity in China, let's just do this, comma, and then we're going to put a footnote in, and we don't want our footnotes italicized. We go into references and then insert footnote. We're going to footnote this, pulling it in from EndNote, and for details about how to use EndNote, you can go to the session that I've taught on how to use EndNote. So let's pretend like this is the book that we have chosen, and we just hit insert, and you notice it doesn't come out right. That's because I need to change the formatting. I'm not going to do it in this session. I'll do it in the next session when I talk about EndNote, because I want to show how to correct those problems. So here's all of the book reports for all of the books. And each one of these titles I've already formatted to appear in the table of contents. So let's, just for demonstration's sake, I'm going to show you up here in table of contents. I'm going into my table, and what you do is go into your references, and here's your table of contents information, and you're going to update the table. And look what happened. I also verified this came out in our contents, and we don't want that. So what happened was, when I created this paper template and I added this wording, it accidentally got into the title that was formatted for this. So what I need to do is to take that off. So what I'm going to do is highlight it, go into add text, see how it's checked level 2? I don't want it to be level 2. I don't want it in there at all. So I say do not show in table of contents. Now I have to reformat it so that it's indented 5 spaces. That's the other Turabian requirement, is that your every paragraph is indented 5 spaces. So now let's go back up and regenerate our table of contents. Watch what happens now if I update my table. It's going to ask me this time, do you want to do the entire table? Yes, I do, because I want to get rid of that language. Click, and there we are. You'll see that the first title right here, Christianity in China, appears where it's supposed to in level 2 and on page 2. So that's what you'll do when you're inserting your book reviews. You're changing the titles and making sure that other information is not taken up or formatted to appear in the table of contents. Okay? Let's go down to chapter 2, and you'll notice in chapter 2 it's the journal. Now this one is already formatted so that these days, this title right here is what's going to appear in the table of contents, but this text right here does not. So here's where day 1, and you're going to obviously change the date here. Remember, when you are changing a title or something that appears in your table of contents, that you highlight just the data that you want to change. So we remember she's in April of 2010. So let's say the class started April 11th, 2010. She would change her date, and then she'd start writing her journal for that day. And what you're going to do in the journal is you are going to write what you've experienced, what you learned very briefly, what you may have discussed with another student or the professor, and a reflection at the end of each day about application. Bakke Graduate University, as you may have noticed, is about experiencing something, reflecting on it, and then applying it to your context. So that's what each day is going to be. You're going to try to stay at between 2 and 3 pages maximum per day, but you could insert photos. I found that it was very helpful for me that when I I went through both the master's and the Doctor of Ministry classes or programs with BGU, and I found that when I had a particular guest lecturer, I would take their picture and then I would insert their picture in for that day so that I would remember that guest lecturer. It was very helpful. And then if something outstanding happened that I wanted a picture of, I would include that too. So you're going to do that for each one of the days, so all the way through to whatever days. Now remember, maybe your class was only 10 days. Well, then what you would do is just delete those. See that? Okay. Chapter 3 is your project title. Now, as you may have noticed, the book reports are actually formatted single-spaced. So, okay, see how that's all single-spaced? Your journal and your project are double-spaced. So part of the Turabian formatting is that it be double-spaced, every paragraph indented 5 spaces. Your left margin is always 1.5 inches. Top, right, and bottom are all 1 inch. Okay? That's just part of Turabian formatting. The other thing that you're going to remember is that everything needs to be footnoted. So no matter where you are in the document, you need to footnote. Footnote you're going to footnote your book report because, and this is why, and I'll briefly touch on this, but then we'll talk more about it when we talk about EndNote. Whenever you footnote using Turabian, okay, so here's a Turabian, an EndNote reference. This book automatically is put into your bibliography. So here's your bibliography, and it will automatically appear. Now I have to format the EndNote to make that work because it's not working right now, but I will, and then you'll see it. Okay, so let's go back to the project just to briefly look it over. Back to those of the book reports. Here's your journal, and here's your project paper. Again, project title. So you can name this whatever you would like. You can have it just be China Project, or a name that maybe you've decided, oh, this is about something in particular, and you could use that title. Now you're going to have first an introductory statement. Whatever your project is about, you might want to just synopsize it here in a paragraph of a couple of sentences. Don't make it long, just something to introduce what you're going to be talking about. Then you can begin with your subheadings. So subheading 1, obviously you're not going to leave this saying subheading 1, you're going to title it something. Let's say the House Church of China, because that's what you're maybe going to talk about as a subheading. Then you do your body of text. Here's a sample of footnoting. Second footnoting sample here. So I've just given you some samples in the paper template that'll just kind of give you an idea of what things should look like. You'll notice that your footnotes should be single-spaced in Times New Roman 10 point, indented the same way that your body text is. If your quote is, actually it's not more than 100 words, if it's more than 4 lines, it must be block quoted. So here we have a block quote. So what it is, it's single spaced and it's indented. You see that? Here's some subheading 2 samples. You can delete all this if you want. It's not important to keep it in, but I just wanted to give those to you as an example. And then your last chapter is your self-evaluation. And this is just a couple of pages that say you want to evaluate what you've learned. What you're telling the professor is, this, you're not evaluating the class, you're evaluating yourself. And so you would say something like, this class was meaningful to me because I learned about house churches or whatever it is that you learned, and I realized I could really learn from the Chinese who even under persecution, and so something like that, and then assign yourself a grade. So you may say, you know, I did the readings, I did a great journal and an excellent project, and I deserve an A. You can say that. Or you can say, you know, I didn't put into this what I think I could have put into it. I give myself an A minus, something like that. So anyway, that's your self-evaluation. And then finally is your bibliography. And you'll notice I put a note here. Using EndNote, this will be generated automatically once you insert your first citation. But you just need to delete this when you're actually doing your own. You'll delete all of these. So that's kind of a synopsis of your paper template. And when you're saving your paper template for the very first time or for each class, you'll notice in the syllabus we're going to go Save As, and the way that you want to save this is delete this, and you're going to put your last name, so this was Sally Sample, dash OV2 China. In other words, you're putting your last name and then the number and the title of the class, okay? And then you say save. So that way you've got it. Save it often. I recommend that you save it on a flash drive separately from your computer because we've had lots of students lose their work by not saving it. So there you go on a brief overview of the paper template. For specific help on things like footnoting and how to do a table of contents, refer to each one of the different sessions that I've offered. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy writing papers.